So, now I welcome here our panelists, Sigelman, Ede Schank Tamkivi, and Eliana Carranza. So, like it was mentioned in the video, that Estonia is pretty good at PISA assessment. We are top of the world, or almost top of the world. But when we look to our economy and how people manage to in the work life, then we are not in the top of the world. So, and my first question to you is, what has gone wrong? And Eliana, because you come from World Bank, you see the big picture. So please give your thoughts. What has gone wrong in the case of Estonia? Why we are top in PISA, but in real economy and putting these skills to work life, we are not in the top of the world?
I think that the first place where this takes me is to think about the alignment of those skills with the type of employment opportunities that are created by this economy. And the question is like, whether the productivity increases that these type of skills are creating are enough to expand the creation of jobs that demand those type of skills. And I believe that then the problems are not so much, on the supply side, but probably on the demand side of the labor market.
Okay. So, Ede, so the same question to you. What has gone wrong?
Obviously, I'm here to give the Estonian perspective, and in my everyday life, I work in a museum, sort of bordering the formal and informal education. But by training, I'm an anthropologist, and my first training was actually as a journalist. And this is also what we're discussing today about the skills that are necessary in the world today. So I personally believe that journalism is probably one of the fields that will most likely be replaced by the AI, or has already been. But actually with my anthropologist colleagues, we conducted this survey a year and a half ago among 13 to 19-year-old Estonian school kids. So we actually conducted in-depth interviews and did some observations, and also various discussion groups, and what was most appalling find for us, obviously it's quite it's no news for the people who work in the field of education on a daily basis, was the huge gap between the formal and informal education. So basically our kids spend most of their days in the formal education setting, and they don't really enjoy it, and that's where we actually drop quite low in the happiness index in the world. Whereas they spend little time in the informal education, and this is the part where what they actually enjoy, and where they see they get the skills that are necessary for the work they will likely do. And the research was conducted mostly to find out what triggers the interest in the STEAM fields, and actually not just STEM, but STEAM, and what was interesting.
So STEAM is science,
technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics.
Okay.
And actually it's slightly different in Estonian, so matik, and we don't actually have the word for A, so we have teadus and tehnoloogia, so 2 T's. So, and that was actually something that was slightly maybe off in our research as well. But the A actually really stands out, like apart from the rest of the STEM. So the STEM is sort of, so this is how kids perceive. They really like the arts because it gives them a lot of liberty in the classroom. inside the formal education, but also in the informal setting. So they really enjoy arts simply because it's playful, it's sort of borderless, or the borders are actually sort of defined by the students themselves, which takes us to the sort of self-directed learning, which is obviously the future. And actually, coming back to your question, I think this is going to be the solution for that. So we will move towards the more away from this formal education as it was conducted, actually the picture what you showed earlier, the big factory setting. So the current education system, not just in Estonia, but all over the world, was obviously the product of the Industrial Revolution, just to get the kids away, to let the parents work in the big factories. But we definitely need to change that setting.
So, Matt, I will ask the same question from you, but one thought that I got from Ede's answer was that maybe we are measuring the wrong thing.
I think that may well be the case. I'm going to start actually with what Eliana shared a minute ago about demand. Eliana raised the question of, what's the demand complexion, and is there a demand gap? And I would actually want to look at a related question as well, which is, are we building the right supply for both where demand is and where demand is going to be? So what we often see is that we have people who are being, students who are being trained very well. Again, to your point about Estonia's leadership in PISA scores, this is a reflection of a strong education system. But an education system can be strong without being well aligned to opportunity. And so being able to say, okay, what are the sets of careers that we want to put front and center, that we think are going to be important for students' futures and for Estonia's future, and how do we define what are the skills that you need for them? That creates a new set of measures for effectiveness, and that measure, the first measure I propose is a measure of alignment. To what extent is what's being taught in the classroom what's being sought in the economy? The second measure, which I would propose that we need to start holding ourselves to account for, is a question of upward mobility. We tend to think about, in the world of education, about learning objectives. What are the things we set to teach in a course, and did the students learn it? And we can measure that fairly easily. And that's within the scope of standard evaluation and assessment. And we'll be talking more about assessment over the course of today. The question then is, what happens to students after they leave school, after they leave university, after they leave a vocational training program? Do they land effectively into jobs? Do they continue progressing in their careers? What upward mobility do they demonstrate? Who moves forward and who doesn't? It's harder to track those things, and particularly for educators, but being able to look at people's careers as a longitude is critical to being able to know whether we're building an effective education system.
Okay. Thank you. Eliana, so from your side, you see like I mentioned before, that you see the whole big picture. And taking the idea from Matt's answer that what happens with the kids if they after they leave from the school, and how it's affected by the educational system that is in each country, and how it's affected by the economic level of this country.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I am understanding your question correctly, but I believe that if I am, the answer is, as Matt was saying, like there is a bit of misinformation. So oftentimes these kids are choosing majors that are not on demand on the economy. They need, to receive better career guidance in order to, select their majors. They need to receive additional guidance also when they start engaging in their, job search, to understand where to search for jobs, what type of jobs can demand their skills. They tend to do a search that is too narrow, focus on just a few types of occupations. They tend to have the skills, but they don't even are aware of the skills that they have, and they don't know how to communicate the skills that they have to employers, how to signal them. So there is a need to, work and strengthen, their understanding of even their own skills as they start participating in the labor market. And on the other side, we also need to strengthen the capacity of employers to observe and to assess those skills, which is not so easy because there are not, enough instruments to do this. As well as because even, when instruments are available, it's relatively costly for most small and medium-sized firms to hire the expertise in order to assess workers in that way. So I do think that a lot of need to work in the information space and, facilitating this matching between job seekers and employers so that job seekers can increase their job search efforts, but also target their search in a more efficient way, and for employers to be able to appreciate their skills beyond, what their degree or their formal education signals they can, contribute.
You mentioned this lack of information, and as it is generally that the wealthier you are, the more information you have. The more information you have, the better decision you make. And but here I see like a downward spiral. That if you come from a poor family, you don't have so much information about what is needed, what to study, what skills to acquire. Then you make bad decisions. You end up on a lousy job or not so well-paid job, then you cannot afford better life for your kids, and so on and so on. So how do you change this spiral?
Well, so just to give you a sense of how serious this problem is, the problem that you are describing, when we have been working on the issue of informal work, and trying to address informality in Latin America in particular. Informality is not only driven by the limited opportunities that the formal sector is creating, it's also to some extent a choice that individuals make, right? Like they choose to work in the informal sector because it offers them some flexibility or some amenities that they value. Or in some cases, it's just, because their, take-home pay is higher if they work in the informal sector than if they have to, pay a series of taxes and other type of, contributions to social security. So when we were studying this problem in Mexico, what we realized is that there was also a serious information problem. We went to high schools, and we were providing information to kids that are in their last year of high school about the benefits of working in a formal job. To our surprise, many of these kids did not even know what a formal job is. These were relatively, poor neighborhoods, poor kids who were recipients of a conditional cash transfer program. Their idea of what a formal job was is a job that requires you to dress nicely, to dress formally. They had no idea of the benefits that it comes with it, the human capital gains that they can experience in the formal job. So what you are saying in terms of the different sets of information that better off and worse off population groups have, it's absolutely true. And the gap is surprisingly large. So it's not only about not having an idea on what are the salaries that different sectors are paying, but it's very basic information about the labor markets. We would call it like labor market literacy that every individual should have. And it's not so easy to solve this information problem. There are like many solutions that now the private sector has developed. We have like job portals. We have many online outlets where you can receive some sort of career guidance, etc. But packaging that information in a way that is credible, in a way that is consumed by these people, in a way that is relevant for these people as well. Because they can understand when the information you are providing to them applies on average versus applies specifically to them. And we can see, that it requires very tailored interventions to the specific, economies, localities, profiles that they do have for them, to update their priors and put them in the right place.
Thank you. Ede, you know a lot about Estonian kids and grown-ups and how they manage. I think we Estonians, we like to think that we don't have the problems that Eliana described that are present in South America, and definitely we do much better than Latvians. But what is the real situation? And do you see the same threats here in Estonia?
Absolutely. So actually what you just brought out, the example of Mexico, we are not that different actually, although Estonia is a tiny country, but there are huge diversities depending on where you live. So actually what you just said earlier about the access to information, which actually in this current information society decides your position in the society, which is actually so true in case of the PISA results as well, because we all know that the Russian-speaking kids are doing much worse. Actually, they live in the same country as we do, and starting this school year, finally, we are solving this issue, trying to solve this, of course, initially creating more problems. But actually the same research we conducted showed that, as I mentioned earlier, that arts was the most popular of all the STEAM subjects. Then actually entrepreneurship and technology got the second and the third place, but unfortunately entrepreneurship is not part of the national curriculum. It's part of the electives. Some schools do have it, so actually this is also one of the lovely myths we love to talk about the Estonian education system, that first of all it's very egalitarian, which I can personally as a parent and as a product of the same system myself can say that it's not true, and second of all it's the accessibility, and then the entrepreneurship is taught, it's called the student companies, is the formal, it's taught by the Junior Achievement program, which was initiated in the US actually. And actually in the UK, they've conducted surveys over the span of 40 years, and they've come to the conclusion that kids who did participate in this student company program did much better later in life. First of all, because of their entrepreneurial mindset, they would be able to create their own jobs, or even if they don't create their own jobs, they do much better in the workforce. And that's definitely, obviously our history is so much shorter, but what we do already see the results of that, and obviously kids see those two fields more promising because of obviously they also see the statistics which tell us that this is where the highest paid jobs are, mostly in technology field. But since I also sit on another seat I have is being a founder of the Jõhvi, which is a new school, coding school in, currently located in Jõhvi, Ida-Virumaa, the sort of left out part of Estonia. And the school was created because actually OSKA report in 2022 said that we are missing 17,000 ICT, or ICT sector is missing 17,000.
So 17,000, not in the whole world,
In
Not
Estonia.
in Estonia.
And actually, that's just, I would actually clarify that's just looking at the ICT sector, but actually, as we all know, information technology is everywhere, so it's not just the ICT sector, it's, well, the schools need their IT managers, the Selver, the big department stores, they all have their IT departments as well, so actually, the need for those jobs, even with the AI coming, is still very much there. And currently, the Estonian vocational schools and academic schools provide just around 2,000 new people to the workforce yearly. So if we started this year, we still wouldn't fill the gap in 10 years. Therefore, we founded the new school, and currently we have, in 3 years, we have 1,000 students who have started, and 100 who have left the school and started in the workforce.
We will come back to this Koodi because it's
I can definitely go on forever.
Interesting subject, but I'm happy that our audience is here because, like it was mentioned, that the access to right information, access to the information that what is really needed in the workplace, or what skills are really needed, what we should study. You have the key that you can give to the students or those who want to acquire new skills. So you are the most important people in Estonia who define where do we go in the future, because you hold the information. But now, Matt, probably you want to add something, but so add it quickly, and then I have some questions to you.
I'll do my best to add quickly, but if we know each other better, you know that's a risky proposition. But I'll start first of all, by the way, just sort of emphasizing this ICT gap. We often think about that as a sector. We need to think about it as jobs, but even more than that, we need to I go back to that idea. We all need to think about that as a set of skills. Because increasingly we're all needing to do at light levels various kinds of coding tasks and the like. And so in a lot of ways we tend to think about a set of skills for the ICT sector which are about producing people for a set of software engineering jobs or the like. But increasingly that's a transversal skill that all students need. And so the gap of 16,000 is actually in some ways far more profound even than that, as big as that number may seem. I want to talk, though, about, I'm glad Ede brought up the question of capacity of programs. Because we tend to think that, hey, if only people had the right information, they would make better choices and then they would go on. What we know is the case in a lot of places is that, and again, it sounds like this is a school system that prides itself on its egalitarianism, but you also mentioned that may or may not be quite as equal as we want it all to be. We know that from studies that we recently did in the US, where there's anything but an egalitarian structure, we know that we surveyed about 1,000 teachers and asked them how important are various kinds of skills, some of these kind of future-ready skills. They said, yeah, they mostly acknowledge them. And then we asked, how well does your school teach them? And we found that, interestingly enough, the teachers in poorer schools where students were more likely to be poor, were more likely to say that these skills were important, and they were far less likely to say that their schools were doing a good job of teaching them. So it's like with the health issues that everybody know that eating healthy, not smoking, not drinking, doing some physical exercises is important for you, but those who have less money, they don't do it as much. Well, and I would say here, this is not even, at least there we can say, hey, well, it's on them for continuing to smoke. But here, if you're a student, if you're 10 years old, it's not on you to make sure that your school is a high-quality school. It's on us. The other thing which you also mentioned is this. We tend to think about career choice as a school, something that you do before you're 18, and then you join the workforce, and everything else plays out from there. What our studies of people's careers show is that there is a surprising amount of upward and downward mobility that plays out over time in people's careers. So we need to make sure that there's ongoing support and navigation to not only make good first choices, but to make onward choices, to prepare people not only for that first job, which is often, let's face it, entry-level jobs aren't necessarily fun, right? But how do we help people keep going and make sure they're moving from a lousy first job to a good next job?
So basically what you recommend is that when a student thinks that he or she needs to go to the labor market,
yes,
not to think about the first job, but the 10th position where he or she wants to end up.
What are the skills you're acquiring now? What are the skills that that next job needs? We're seeing actually a big problem in a lot of countries, often in developing countries where there's a lot of status to going to university. We're seeing this in China, we're seeing this in the GCC especially, where people are going to university and say, hey, look, I'm doing what I was told to do. I went to university and they came out. The jobs aren't there. Either the jobs aren't there or the program that they studied isn't well aligned with opportunity. And they actually wind up sitting unemployed because they say, well, look, I don't want to go and take a job that's below my status. But as a result, their skills become rustier. They become less and less relevant. So it's really important to say, okay, in any given first job, a first job, an entry-level worker, is kind of like a stem cell. You know, stem cells are so valuable because they can get specialized over time. Well, okay, what are the skills that you're acquiring? How did you learn how to work? How did you learn about the workplace? And then let's figure out what you can do to move on from there. What are the additional skills that close the gap to the next job?
That's a very good point, that the first job is like a stem cell. It's an amazing idea. I will start using it. But now I want to turn the direction of our discussion a little bit. So when we talk about skills and acquiring new skills, then there are like 3 different levels. We will talk about individual level, what I want. Then there is this organizational level, what our company wants, or our organization wants from me, and then the societal level, what they want, or what the government wants. So, and I see that there is lots of conflict built in. So how to solve it? How to make peace with it? And can there be even a long-lasting peace? So, Eliana, how to combine these individual, organizational, and societal needs?
That's a very big challenge, and I would say that it's related with this idea that Matt introduced about the skills pyramid, right? Like the more foundational and the most specialized. So as a society, what we value is a combination of all of them, but the public sector's role, in my view, is to deliver, the base of the pyramid, the skills that are transferable across sectors, the ones that are going to, make your labor force flexible and adaptable to changes in the labor market.
The base level skills, people need to know how to read, how to write,
how to think critically, how to work in teams, resilience, etc. The higher up you move into that pyramid, the more specialized those skills. And we are talking about a level of specialization that can be not only at the industry level, but at the firm level and at the occupation level within those firms. So for example, think about the automotive industry, right? Like where Audi has a specific set of equipment, and BMW utilizes other type of robots, etc. So those skills become highly locked into the, the specific characteristics of the production process within the firm. So there is an aspect of skills that is kind of like a private good, in the sense that is for the return of the individual who is acquiring the skills, for the specific return of the employer that is hiring those skills. And there is a component that is more like public, more of a public good. And I believe that even, with the best intentions, if the government tries to provide the most specialized skills, that's not, the most effective model. Those skills tend to be typically, developed on the job. And currently, one of the problems that we are observing in the labor market, particularly with youth, is that there is very high work rotation, so that they don't stay enough to acquire those skills, on the job in the private sector. And because of this high rotation, also firms are not willing to invest in, developing further the skills of these youth. So I do think that as a society, we have to think about the role, that the firms have in providing, these type of skills in developing the human capital, and the role that the public sector has. Then we also see on the other extreme, the public sector trying to deliver very high-end skills when, their trainers don't even have the capacity, or the public sector cannot afford to have the type of equipment that will allow, youth to acquire the skills that are necessary in the workplace. So it's not the most, efficient and not the most cost-effective way of delivering those skills. And we have to think about other models depending on, whether they are more foundational versus more specialized.
Okay. Ede, you have kids, and probably they have asked from you already, what skills do I need?
Well,
And how you help them to find peace with this individual, organizational, and societal needs?
so obviously every parent knows that the last advice you'll take is from your parent. And obviously it was, my mother was a journalist, and she told me, do not study journalism or media at university, and of course I did, and of course I regretted it later, but I had to learn it from my own mistakes. But I was actually thinking when you mentioned this upward and downward mobility earlier. So that's, and actually obviously it plays out on the individual as well as the organizational and societal scale. I have a friend, a Danish guy who lives in Monaco, and he's got 2 kids. And one of them is a software developer who has made a great career, earns a lot of money, and he's miserable. He hates his job. And then my friend's daughter is an artist, so she creates art. She's only ever sold 1 piece of art in her lifetime, and that was to her father. And she's happy, she loves what she's doing. So this, on an individual scale, obviously we see that your personal happiness is what matters, right? And it also matters on the societal level, because we would strive for having happy people that hopefully will create a happy society. But on the tootejuhi level, as you cut me off earlier, so I'll just continue. So what we've seen in these 3 years is that we've become a retraining facility, since we still do not have the sort of so we do not offer any official diploma. So basically, it's sort of since we created the school in cooperation with our partners, the IT companies. So obviously, since these companies are willing to hire our graduates, that actually is the sort of seal of approval. And what we've seen over these years that actually almost a quarter of our students come from academic backgrounds. So
in tootejuhi?
Yeah, so some of them even have doctorate degrees. I've personally spoken to a guy who has a doctorate degree in engineering. So obviously doing mining in Ida-Virumaa, which is hopefully also a diminishing economic, like a field of economy. And but we do have a few examples. For example, there's one student who, or now he's an alumnus as well. So he used to be a doctor in Finland. We all know in Estonia that many of our doctors go for higher salaries to work in Finland or Norway. And he was also working in Finland, earning probably 3 times the average salary of an Estonian doctor, not just the average salary of Estonia, but the average salary of a doctor, so more than 10,000 euros. And again, he was miserable doing this job. So he decided to switch his career, come to Kontiofi, become a junior developer, so sort of this entry-level job. And he's now working as a junior developer, and he's so happy and earns 3 times less than he did. We also have other examples like that. So again, this is like, if we look at this sort of moving upwards or downwards, I think it's sort of...
As I understand, what you want to say, or to summarize it somehow, is that we should measure the happiness, or we should optimize for happiness when acquiring new skills. So
absolutely. So again, as you started the day talking about the scientific method, I'm not so sure we have a scientific method figured out how to measure happiness. but I'm a firm believer in that this is actually what counts.
Matt?
So interestingly enough, by the way, on this topic, but also I love the broader questions you're asking. We recently did some work looking at measuring worker mobility and actually looking at the employer contribution to workers' ability to rise. It turns out 2 workers can be working in the same role in directly competing firms and have entirely different prospects for moving up based on the support that their employer gives and the culture that they build. So we wanted to figure out which factors matter most. And we asked 1,000 workers, 500 workers. We asked 500 workers kind of, what are the things that you value? Is it your pay? Is it your promotion prospects? Is it a range of other sets of things? And what we found was pay mattered a lot. That wasn't too surprising. Right behind pay was people's ability to be able to move up to a better job over time. Now, what that says to me is that people want to rise. Now, some people, careers are funny things, and we all take different twists, turns, and tangles. I never could have predicted I'd be doing what I do today when I left even university. But I think what we need to do, since each person's individual happiness will be borne out by them, is number one, we need to give them the skills that enable them to make a good start. We need to make sure they have the skills that will enable them to reinvent themselves over time. That act of reinvention, of saying, hey, you know what, I've decided I want to be not a doctor but a developer, comes down to an ability to not only understand where to go next, but it comes down to having those core fundamental foundations that allow you to change. When we're seeing, one of the things we see in a lot of economies is that workforce participation starts to diminish, particularly for people working in industrial trades, construction trades, and the like, in their late 40s, early 50s. What's happened is that those jobs are changing. The workers don't. They don't have the skills to acquire new skills, and they drop out of the workforce. So one of the things that we can do to assure people's happiness is make sure they have that core solid foundation. In aligning to your original question between individual, organizational, societal, just a quick thought. And the answer may come down to the extent to which we can change the valence from which we address that question. All of us who are working in workforce training and education and the like, we always start with the individual. It makes sense. We want to empower students. We want to put students first. But students and their families always talk about education as a bridge to opportunity. And that means actually starting with opportunity. That means actually answering the question from the societal to the organizational to the individual rather than the other way around. If we can say, okay, where is Estonia's economy going? What are the sectors that we're targeting for growth and for leadership? And what's the talent they need? That industrial strategy becomes an economic development strategy. An economic development strategy becomes ultimately a talent strategy, and a talent strategy becomes a learning strategy.
Now I take some questions from the audience, and the questions are a little bit complicated, I would say, and individual happiness versus pleasing society. If people are more enjoying arts and culture, but society needs to grow, the skills that society needs are related to STEM fields, and how to find the balance. Because the world around us is technically very complex. To understand it, we need STEM skills. But people are happy doing art. How to find the balance? And how to force students or people to choose STEM skills? So, from society part, we want more STEM, but from the personal happiness, we want more art and culture. How to force people to choose what we need as a society? Eliana.
Let me see how I start answering to your question. But as I was hearing, our other panelists, I was thinking about a point that keeps coming up in conversations when I have with youth and with people who work in employment agencies. That is that we tend to think about our choice of academic major as an academic decision. So, for example, if I am, a young person finishing high school who likes biology, the natural conclusion for him is like, oh, I may be a good doctor. What they don't realize is that there is a difference between what is your academic choice and your life choice. And choosing to be a doctor is also choosing a specific type of lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that requires, to work odd hours, to do night shifts, etc. If you don't have that understanding of the life choice that is associated with your choice of major, is when oftentimes we have that type of mismatch. So to that extent, I do think that there are certain sectors where the employment environment has very particular characteristics that are not necessarily appealing to workers, even if the major may be appealing for them. And some of them may be opting out precisely because they are trying to balance different type of features, right? And we see now firms are starting to become aware of this, and they are also modifying their HR practices, their work models, etc., to try to provide workers both the happiness that they are seeking, but also attract more talent to work in those specific sectors and incentivize them to acquire skills that are relevant for those sectors. Yeah.
Okay. Now, today we have not yet here in this panel talked about the one thing that is in all of our minds. Not when the lunch break starts, but about AI. So, what are the most needed skills or AI-related skills that lifelong learning programs should have and they should not miss?
So I talked before about what I called the new power skills of the generative AI era. And again, these are those skills which are at the intersection of augmentation, so the skills that make you do your work better, and automation, where technology is helping you work more efficiently. And this notion that there are places in your job which you're going to get both more efficient and more effective says that these are skills that we need to make sure that we're investing in the workforce. We need to build out the kinds of capabilities like the ability to forecast, like the ability to analyze data, to visualize data as key places where we need to help people not only protect themselves, but again, build for leadership.
So can I summarize it so that the AI skills are like a cheat code in the game of life?
These power skills, in a way, right? Yes. The key thing I just want to emphasize is that AI skills, or those power skills, aren't about AI. You know, it's very interesting. I often hear people talking about, oh, AI is going to create new jobs, and everyone always runs to use the example of a prompt engineer. I don't think there's going to be actually all that demand for prompt engineers. I don't think AI is a technology, by the nature of it, that most of us are going to outsource using generative AI to some specialized person. This is a capability that we're all going to need. The ability to do prompt engineering at scale is something that will make us more effective and more efficient.
Ede, your thoughts about the skills that we need in the age of AI?
Exactly, coming back to that question about balancing these needs of the society and your personal happiness. So I think we should make a difference between the sort of outward motivation and inward motivation. So obviously this, well, I personally understand this sort of need of the job market as the outward. So basically the pay, like kids being interested in technology and entrepreneurship. Well, one of the reasons is that they see it as the place where they get higher salaries. I see it as an outward motivation, whereas the inward motivation would be that I really like this field and I want to learn more about it. And this is where we come back to these opportunities, accessibility, and also role models. Very important thing we haven't talked about yet. So obviously, why do we only have 25% of women in the ICT field? Is that it's just a lack of role models. It used to be a very masculine thing, and we still get those. Like at school, most of our IT teachers would be men, male teachers. Well, luckily, for example, my son, who chose programming as his major in high school, he has a female programming teacher, and she's, I think, one of the best teachers you could have. But for girls, usually in a more regular setting, you have this male teacher who would tell you, we all know these stories, that being a girl, why don't you just make sandwiches for the boys while they do the programming? And it's very hard to overcome these age-old stereotypes. So again, if we had, and obviously us as parents, we do perpetuate these stereotypes, like instead of putting our daughters to the programming activities, we always first put them to ballet classes and singing classes and maybe drawing classes, so art, as I said.
So basically, with the skills that we need and the people that we need, the skills that we need, and also that people should learn these skills, not depending on the age or gender. So somehow it's like a marketing problem, that we don't market them in the right way.
I think we do market them. So I would say that the STEM and STEAM, well, raise your hand in the audience who's heard about the unicorn squad in Estonia. So we all know that Viimsi is the hotbed where this all started from. And the reason why this club got started was that Helena Kotka got kicked out of her programming lesson because she was a girl. And then her father said, I'm gonna fix this problem. And that's why he started this thing. And now 3,000 girls all over Estonia are getting technology. But this is, again, after-school activity. So getting it into the national curriculum is something that we still need to fix.
So that's why I'm a little bit worried that the Minister of Education is not here, because she could have the power to fix it somehow. But I will now ask about the World Bank view, that how do we solve this problem that we have? That girls are not learning the skills that they need to learn. And the reason why they are not learning it is because they don't have role models, and we have some stereotypes from our past.
Mentors. We have seen these models, working quite successfully, not only in the case of coding skills, but also in the space of entrepreneurship, where being assigned, like a female mentor who is, a strong business leader can help incentivize other people to enter, as well as, to expand their businesses. And surprisingly, we have learned that it's not so much female mentors that matter as much as male mentors, the ones that are more effective at, supporting women to move into traditionally male-dominated sectors, which are the ones that have the highest salaries. Yeah.
Okay. So I think with this, that we need to have more mentors. We need to optimize for happiness. We also need to be prepared for AI. We can close this session and come back after the lunch break. So with these words, I thank you.
Thank you.
For answering my questions and giving out these good ideas about skills and what do we need for the future, and what are the problematic, what are the problems in this sector. Okay, so let's make a big applause to the panelists.
Thank you.